All right, we'll call this special call meeting into order, 10 a.m. on August 3rd. Entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion.
Second.
We need to say the reason that you're going.
The reason being pursuant to Kentucky Open Meetings Act, exception for discussion that might lead to appointment, dismissal, or discipline of an individual employee.
Make a motion.
All right. Second. Motion made by Magistrate Short and seconded by Magistrate Simmons. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We are now in closed session.
Come out of closed session, we can come back in. Make a motion, we're out of closed session.
All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. We're back open.
Is that door locked or unlocked?
It was not now.
I had Julie come and
Unlock it.
unlock it as far as I understand.
Everyone's mics are on? Gentlemen. Would you turn it back on, Tom? Is it red? No, it's underneath, but if it's red, it's
Did you notify Bill?
verifying that the receiver's on.
Hmm?
I'm just making sure with Bill. Yeah, we're all good.
Okay. Councilman?
Looks like we made a motion to come out of closed session. Keegan Hinkle has requested a public hearing, which is his right to do so, and he's represented by Josh Tucker, his attorney. And at this hearing, Keegan has the opportunity to, or his counsel, or both, have the opportunity to speak, but the magistrates, the county judge executive, do not have to answer any questions or respond to any comments made by Mr. Hinkle.
We also intend to call other people to the session to provide testimony in his behalf as well. So.
Okay.
All right. Would you like us to begin, or how do we want to go forward?
Yes.
Okay. I'm addressing. I'll be addressing specifically. I'll get in front of the mic so we can record it. I'll be addressing specifically the grounds that were stated in the two letters I've received on behalf of the Office of Boyle County Attorney from Mr. Herron. We've got 9 separate grounds on the first letter that was dated July 28th, which is my understanding was the grounds for the termination that were based upon the hearing that was done on the 27th of July. And then I received a letter dated July 30th. Both of these were sent courtesy copy via email to me at my request, which stated additional grounds, specifically with regard to neglect of duty. Those grounds were incentive payments to delinquent, 2021 to 22 budget, specifically that had not been entered into KVSS as required. The allegation is that Mr. Hinkle was delinquent in closing out months. There were past due invoices that were supposed to be paid within 30 days, and an allegation that he was unresponsive to emails. To make this as succinct as possible, I'd like to address the way I'm understanding this, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that all of these are pursuant to an allegation that he was neglectful of duty. I think it's only explicitly stated in the July 30th letter, and the way I read KRS 680104 is that the allegation has to be made that he has either been neglectful of duty, he's either neglected his duty, been incompetent, or dishonest. To my knowledge, there is no allegation of either incompetence or dishonesty. Is that accurate?
Well, I guess depend how you call it. The incompetence could be carried over from, I mean, you could infer that based upon the grounds that we gave, that could be considered incompetence as well. I mean, it's not specifically stated as incompetence, it's neglect of duty, but I think that could carry over and be part of the same.
Okay. First, I'd like to introduce two pieces. I've got Mr. Hinkle's performance review from February 3rd, 2021. I've got 7 copies. I've redacted his social security number, but other than that, it is identical. And since we're in a public session, I think that's appropriate, even though it's on file, obviously, with the fiscal court. So, pass these around. Thank you.
That's fine, you can give it.
Thank you.
Also, I've got 2 other of those. But this is from August 25th, 2020, and from August 25th, 2020. Both of these are where he was promoted from finance officer to assistant county treasurer, and then from assistant county treasurer to county treasurer, to my understanding, on the same day. So I will hand these out as well. Finally, I've got Mr. Hinkle's time records that he had submitted. These are not the ones that are signed because he didn't have access after his suspension, best of my knowledge, to these records. They're kind of lengthy, but they're from January 1st of this year, which predates his performance review, which we'll get into in a second, till now. I've got 2 separate copies that I can pass around, or 3 separate copies I can pass around. I'd like to keep one just for my records while we're doing this. Apologize just because of the length of them. I'll just give these to Mr. Herron, and then we need to pass them around however we need to.
Thank you.
I'd like to specifically first address the what I passed around, and that was the employee evaluation from February 3rd of 2021. And if we can go to the second page, I'd like everybody to review each of these, and I'll briefly just touch on it. He was evaluated by Mr. Hunt, the judge executive, on a variety of different criteria. He met or exceeded expectations on all of those criteria, and I'll just briefly do it for the record. Quality of work, he exceeded expectations with comments which appear to be, to my understanding, in Mr. Hunt's, and it is signed by Mr. Hunt, handwriting, Accuracy and detail are excellent in meeting suspenses. I'm not sure exactly what suspenses refers to. Attendance and punctuality meets expectations. Comments, examples, working more toward consistent core hours, provides advance notice of absence. Reliability and dependability exceeds expectations. He manages projects and workload constantly or consistently and effectively. Communication skills exceeds expectations. Presents his communication extremely well, and his organization is excellent. Judgment and decision-making exceeds expectations. Appreciate his decision-making process and demonstrates judgment well beyond his years. Initiative and flexibility exceeds expectations. Regularly identifies problems and offers reasonable and well-thought-out solutions. Cooperation and teamwork exceeds expectations. Works exceedingly well with all departments, staff, and court members. Knowledge of position exceeds expectation. A quick learner who consistently demonstrates a high level of technical understanding of complex issues. Training and development meets expectations with the comment, new but willing and eager to always seek professional self-improvement. OLG, i.e. example, DLG budget worksheets. And in summary, enthusiastically removed from probationary status and placed him as a full-time county treasurer. That was February of this year. Next up, we've got his time records that he submitted. It's my understanding, and Mr. Hinkle can explain this more, that these were provided all to the fiscal court and were signed off on. These are what we had available on short notice based on this being set. And we appreciate you all working with my schedule. I appreciate that because, as Mr. Herron may have explained, my mother-in-law's passed and I'm going to Texas tomorrow. So, thank you all for that. Each of these show that he has been, that these were presented to the fiscal court, signed off on, demonstrating his work hours. The reason I'm specifically bringing that up and only going back to January 1st is he was graded on his work performance in February, and it was exceeded expectations with regard to that, or pardon me, met expectations. There's specific allegations in here with regard to the July 30th letter, and let me make sure because we've got two different letters, so I don't want to lose my train of thought and get off balance. But I don't believe that this allegation was included in the July 28th letter. With regard to the allegation. Pardon me, I mixed that up. Number 2 of the on the July 28th letter, work attendance and timeliness issues of Keegan Hinkle, even after being counseled, including failure or refusal to use the county's time clock. We're unclear of what this counseling refers to, and it's my understanding that he was the time clock, and he can explain this better than I can, that he was submitting the timesheets to the county that were showing that, and there was a transition into using the time clock more often, and as that process was being implemented. We're unclear of what this counseling refers to, or how this allegation that his work attendance became an issue that would reflect on his work, on his neglect of duty or incompetence, because we've got evaluations from February showing that he was meeting expectations. He was doing all this, and to my knowledge, and Mr. Hinkle, if you want to kind of come up here with me for this, do you have any, what do you believe that this counseling with referring to your using the time clock refers to?
As far as counseling, I know that, like in the evaluation, more set core hours. I know that we've had issues with the time clock. We still have issues with the time clock. I've been signing into the time clock, and as far as counseling goes, I really don't know what kind of counseling I've had on the time clock.
Okay. But did you believe by submitting time sheets that you were fulfilling your duties to report your time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With regard to number 1, the written statements by staff members, you've reviewed those written statements that were provided. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
With regard to those, had you had any conversation with staff members of recent to address any sort of comments, and I'm talking prior to July 27th, with regard to any comments made by you or anybody else in the staff about things being taken out of context or something that might have offended or otherwise upset someone?
Yes, sir. Me and Julie Wagner, our county administrator, had a meeting. We were working on some things. We needed to have a discussion. And she came to me and she said she didn't have any issues with anything going on, rather than some comments to the women. So with that, I went to the occupational tax office and I came back to our office. I addressed both women in both offices and I said, you know, I was kind of taken back by Julie's comments. If I've ever said or done anything that has offended you all or upset you all, I sincerely apologize. I would hope that you all would come to me and that we have the relationship that we could talk about it. All of them said, no, we don't have any issues. We're not bothered by anything at all. And we understand that you've been going through a stressful time and it's been a busy time. And that's all they said.
Do you know approximately what date that conversation would have occurred?
It was June 22nd after fiscal court meeting.
How do you recall that date?
I recall that date because I actually spoke a lot in that meeting, and I can remember exactly what Julie was wearing that day when we spoke in my office after the fiscal court meeting.
In your review of these written statements, I'm looking at the dates being in April or May specifically, that the comments that are at issue were made. So it's your testimony that you talked with individuals whose statements have been provided on June 22nd. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
And they didn't, at that point, reference any, didn't describe or reference any being upset about anything or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Has anybody, has a superior to you or anybody with authority over you had ever come to you and counseled you on your comments to staff or other members in the office?
Never.
You referenced a conversation with Julie. Is she your supervisor or superior?
No, sir.
How would you characterize her comments to you?
I was taken back by the comments.
Did you believe that she was offering that as constructive criticism or something that you should be aware of?
I'm not sure that it was constructive criticism or if she was trying to come to me as a friend.
Okay. But you immediately acted on that as soon as you were aware of the issue, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was after April and May of 2021?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With lack of attention and details to your job, is that reflected in your performance evaluation?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is the lack of attention to details of your job, is that reflected in your performance evaluation?
No.
Was your last performance evaluation in February?
Yes, sir.
Since February, has anybody who's a superior to you discussed with you or made you aware of any lack of attention that you have demonstrated?
No, sir.
Number 4 and number 5 are with regard to the incident. I'm going to come back to that. I think the video, has everybody seen the video? Okay. We'll discuss that in more detail. I'm not sure that rises to the level, or is that being taken as for his neglect of duty or for incompetence? It's mentioned here, but I'm not sure exactly how it relates to either of those two statutory criteria. And if it's not relating to those two, I'm not sure we even need to address it. But is that something that's being used as part of the court's evaluation?
It was partially used to talk about his incompetence.
Okay. In number 6, we've got the Planning and Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. And we're going to go in detail again with regard to the incident on July 20th in more detail, but Were you acting as treasurer in any of the incidents identified in 4, 5, or 6?
No, sir.
Have you conspicuously tried to stay out of the case with regard to your parents and the kennel?
Most definitely.
With regard to destruction of Boyle County property, can you explain what happened with regard to that incident? Or to the best of your knowledge, what they're referring to here?
Yeah, I don't recall kicking a gate. I don't recall kicking a gate. That's the best thing I can tell you.
Okay. Did anybody ever make you aware of any allegation that you were kicking a gate prior to this?
No, sir.
Were you ever counseled to, was there a gate? Where was this gate? Have you ever observed a gate in the Boyle County, on Boyle County property?
Yes, I've observed a gate for approximately a few hours.
Okay. But do you recall kicking?
No, I do not recall kicking a gate.
Do you recall ever being accusing of kicking this gate prior to the letter of July 28th?
No, sir.
With regard to following COVID protocols, were you ever provided with a COVID protocol in writing?
I don't know if I was personally given one. I know there's signs around the courthouse.
Okay. Did you ever enter using the using the judge's back entrance to avoid having your temperature checked?
No, sir. I don't even know how that would be possible.
How did you typically enter the courthouse to go to your job?
Originally, we could still come through the employee door. Eventually, they locked the door. You had to come through the front entrance.
Okay. Did you wear a mask when you went through the front entrance? Typically,
Not every time.
were you allowed to enter the building?
I wasn't not allowed.
Okay, so you, as we've said, you attended your job and were allowed to come in, correct?
Yes.
Were you ever specifically counseled that you needed to follow COVID protocols by anybody with fiscal court or a supervisor?
No, sir.
Did you take any steps to secretly place a recording device in the Boyle County fiscal courtroom on July 27th?
No, sir.
Do you recall making a statement to anybody to threaten that you did so?
No, sir.
Is it possible you may have made an offhand joke or something to that effect?
I think everybody would want to be a fly on the wall in a meeting concerning them.
Okay. Do you recall ever stating that to anybody?
Not that I recall, but that's something characteristical of me to say.
Do you have a somewhat sarcastic sense of humor?
Most definitely.
With regard to the neglected duty, I intend to call, with the neglected duty allegations that are addressed in July 30th, I'm going to go through them with him, and I'm going to call witnesses to these effect to provide more information to the fiscal court. Specifically, with regard to the incentive payments that are delinquent, when did you start working for the fiscal court?
August 3rd of 2020.
Okay. When did you become the full-time treasurer?
October 1st.
Okay. At the time that you started your work, were the TransNav incentive payments 10 quarters behind?
I don't believe they would have been 10 quarters behind at that point, but they were behind.
When you started as treasurer, do you recall off the top of your head, or do you recall how far behind they were?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I just know that they were behind.
Okay. Why were they behind?
Can I legally say that? Why they were behind?
Okay, he says something, he doesn't want to say anything that it involves county business, and if we could make a motion just for him to say this in closed session and then come back, just to avoid any problems that might cause the county. Would that be a problem?
I don't think so.
Do we turn off the recording and excuse
Well-
Robin?
I'm going to make our motion first.
Good to go.
before we,
Make a motion
Do we
for a
have,
closed
why don't-
session.
are we gonna go into closed session anyway? At some point, or no? Okay.
closed session to discuss,
Possible
matters that are
litigation.
private, public, to the public.
So
Confidential.
who's gonna make the motion?
I made the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion been made,
Okay.
Darcy Short, and seconded Magic Gay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Go to closed
Aye.
session. All right. Robin, stop recording.
How many incentive counts were there?
3.
Okay. There's an allegation that you may have treated Pittman Creek differently because you were friends, that there was a friendship between you and the, I guess, the owners of Pittman Creek. Is that accurate?
They did not receive any benefits from a relationship that they have with me.
Were the issues that
One
exist?
second. We really need to make that motion to come out while we're on camera. and
Okay,
recording.
all right. Motion to come out of closed session.
I'll make it, yeah.
Made by Magic Gate, seconded by Magic Short. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. We're out of closed session.
I'll just briefly repeat
No,
that.
no action was taken during closed session.
So just to briefly repeat, so we're out of, so we're on the record and do this properly. There were, how many incentive payment accounts were there?
3.
So Pittman Creek, there's an allegation that Pittman Creek was treated differently because of some sort of friendship you had with the owner. Is that accurate?
No, sir.
Did Pittman, the issues that we identified with regard to TransNav and Mega Airframe System, did they also exist with regard to Pittman Creek?
No, sir.
Did Pittman Creek provide all documentation required to receive their incentive payments?
Yes, sir.
Were they delinquent?
No, sir.
With regard to the budget being entered into KVS, it says as required. Do you understand, or what do you believe that requirement, do you have any knowledge of where that requirement would come from?
No, sir.
Any statutory requirement are you aware of?
No, sir.
Any, was it ever a direct order from anybody with the fiscal court?
No, sir.
Okay. With regard to entering the budget into KVS, can you just explain what KVS is?
KVS is the system that the county uses to run business.
Okay. And so, walk me through this so I understand. Is there a difference between entering data in and then also using the system to reconcile the budget?
Is there a difference?
Are those two separate, two separate functions that you need to do?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you, to your knowledge, had you timely entered were you in the process of timely entering the budget?
I was in the process of doing that.
Okay. When do you when were you, is this your first time doing the budget for a new year by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had you had any contact or any discussions with your predecessor about a time frame that the budget needed to be completed by?
Yes, sir. And the budget had been completed. It just was not entered into the system yet.
What was your understanding of when the budget needed to be entered by?
As soon as the previous year was closed.
Had the previous year been closed?
No, sir.
Okay. Which leads us into delinquent and closing out the months. It says that there was an allegation that you had not closed out the months of April, May, and June 2021. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Why had that occurred?
This is no different than any other quarter that we do. I always wait on a response from DLG to make sure that the quarter was clear. That way I can go back and make journal entries in those months if need be.
Had you received that response yet?
No, sir.
Would that also include the end of the year fiscal closeout? Would you also be waiting for that?
Yes, sir.
And was that your understanding of how you needed to accomplish your duties as treasurer?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the past due invoices, there is, I'm going to divide the IRS notice from the rest of those, and I'd like to talk about the unpaid past due invoices that were, it says that these were found in a stack of paper in Keegan's office, and there's 4 separate ones listed, but I believe that you can explain all of them with the same explanation. Can you go ahead and do that, please?
Yes, sir. So if you all will remember correctly, 4 out of these 5 are payments that we were waiting to receive from the city. And once we received it from the city, we would pay that to the people on these invoices. To my knowledge, we had not received payment from the city, and I actually believe one is not on here that we did receive payment, and they paid it June 30th, and I believe that Mr. Hunt would remember that and the issues that we had with the city.
Okay. Now, were some of these invoices that were found, did the invoice, was it sent to you prior to the actual service or item or goods being provided?
So the $4,495 one, the original invoice was November 25th, and the product had gotten lost in the mail. They sent us a new invoice. I believe it was January 5th or 6th, We didn't receive the product until February, therefore we paid it in March because we pay bills twice a month.
Okay. So do you believe, and I'm going to reference that this is the invoice that we're talking about, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what date is that on the invoice?
November 25th.
And I'm specifically referring to the attachment to the July 30th letter. And so it says that it was paid March 30th. So you believe that that was a timely manner because this invoice was sent prematurely.
Yes, sir.
How many invoices approximately in your duties did you come across on a monthly basis?
A few hundred.
Were all they timely paid as a matter of course?
As far as I'm aware.
With regard to the IRS notice, do you have any recollection of receiving that?
I do not have any recollection of receiving that.
Okay. And again, you received several hundred at least requests for payment a month, correct?
Or several hundred a week, and quite a few hundred monthly.
Does anything notable about that stand out for you?
No, sir.
Had you ever received a notice from the IRS for request for payment?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed what was attached here?
Yes, sir. In detail.
Let me find my specific. Apologize for the delay. I'm trying to go to the IRS. What does it say, read this for me here.
We made changes to your June 30th, 2020 form 941. As a result, your amount due is $45.21.15. This wasn't an audit. Your return may be examined in the future. Please keep this notice and your other important documents in a secure place.
And I think you just stated that you did not recall receiving that.
I did not.
Did you have any involvement in the June 30th, 2020 941?
No, sir.
Is this the first you're hearing of this?
As I recall.
Were you aware, or this is addressed to the Boyle County Fiscal Court, Boyle County Treasurer. Did you receive all mail addressed that way?
No, sir.
Why was that?
Sometimes the mail around here ends up in different offices, so sometimes it goes to the judge, sometimes it may end up on a different floor.
Okay. It stated that this was in a pile of documents on your desk. Do you recall putting it there?
No, sir.
I want to specifically state that this was found. It doesn't say that, unlike the other invoices, it just said there was a founding notice from the IRS dated, but it doesn't say that it was found in a stack of papers like the other invoices were. So we're not sure what found refers to, and it doesn't explain that. Now, with regard to the unresponsive emails, and we're going to address the TransNav stuff here because we had the issue with the closed session. So it says that you have over 1,420 unread emails through Tuesday, July 27th. I checked my email account. I think I had 42,000 unread emails. Can you explain why there would have been that amount of unread emails in your email box that you used as treasurer?
Well, I think it would be a combination of reasons. Number one, I'm in the CAFCO group message. There's all the treasurer's finance officers in the state of Kentucky are in there. That thing blows up daily. There's no need for me to open every single one of the treasurer's response or what they're talking about at that time. Another reason is I still get my predecessor's emails just in case there's something that comes through that I need to see. The other is there's a ton of junk and spam mail that I get of people trying to sell the county something. I don't feel that it's necessary to open every single one of those emails, and you can open an email and mark it as unread.
Did you ever do that?
Possibly, yes, sir.
There's an allegation that you've ignored 8 emails from the TransNav headquarters. There's, as we discussed, there's a statement from March that you were playing the phone tag. Was it your custom to respond to TransNav via phone?
Yes, sir.
Had you communicated with TransNav specifically with regard to the incentive payments?
Yes, sir.
Did you give them a date? Did you tell them that you were busy with your duties and that you would respond to their emails at a date certain?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what date that you told them that you would address the issue?
Yes, sir. I had given them, I had worked with them, I had helped them, I had given them examples of how to do it correctly so that we could get them caught up. And I explained to them that I was about to go through my first budget season and that it would probably be in the next FY that we would get this settled up.
When would that be? What date would that be?
With FY in June 30th, so sometime after that.
Okay, so after you were finished with the fiscal ending or reconciling the fiscal year, you would then get back with them?
Yes, sir.
These emails, and we've got the dates on them, were they prior to whenever you told them that you were going to get back to them?
Were the emails prior?
Yes. I mean, did you tell them, I'll get back to you whenever I'm finished with the fiscal year, and they kept emailing you despite being informed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you feel the need to respond to emails after they'd been informed of when you would address the issue?
No, sir.
And why is that?
Because we had already discussed when I would have time to check this and settle up on it.
Okay. At any point, did somebody with TransNav leave you what you would consider politely an ugly voicemail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you characterize that? I used the word ugly, but you tell me how you took it.
Well, his name is, I don't know if I need to state his name, but a guy that works there, I think that he was the superior to the lady that I originally started this work with. He was supposed to show up for a phone call meeting, said he was too busy. Then he left me kind of a rude, nasty voicemail, and I had done nothing but try to help them. You know, this was an issue before I came in, and I tried to help them as much as I could. So.
Did you consider that them emailing you prior to whenever you were told them you'd get back with them on the issue to be some sort of being a squeaky wheel trying to get grease?
Yes, sir.
Okay, or jump line or something like that? Okay. Are there any allegations that you ignored any emails substantively, not, a professional organization or just solicitation or anything like that? Are you aware of any allegation that you ignored emails that would be pertinent to your duties as treasurer?
No, sir.
With regard to the incident on July 20th, everybody's seen the video, but in my viewing of it, the portion that involves Mr. Getty and Mr. Lanigan, at least the first part, occurs off camera. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe what occurred during the portion that was off camera?
I was trying to speak to Mr. Getty. He had seemed to have some type of, I don't know what it was, I guess he was upset with the court or me or what it was. So I wanted to kind of resolve the issue with him and just ask him about some comments he had made to Mr. Herron, and maybe I shouldn't have done that at the time, but I did not intend for any altercation. I just intended for a conversation, and after that, I'm not sure.
Well, they could be saying that somebody is saying offhand, don't put your hands on him, don't put your hands on him. Could you explain to me what that referred to?
That would be Mr. Getty telling Mr. Lanigan to get his hands off of me and not to put his hands on me, because I was just trying to speak to Mr. Getty, and you can actually hear him say that in the video.
After that, did you ever put hands on either Mr. Getty or on Mr. Lanigan?
No, sir.
Did you walk away from the situation?
Yes, sir.
Now, there's been a lot made about you taking off your belt and untucking your shirt. Were you alone when that occurred?
I was with my mother.
Okay. Were you stressed out?
It had been one heck of a day.
Why did you do that?
I was walking towards my car. It had been a long day. I just was decompressing.
And the only person around you at that time was your mother, correct?
My mother and Miss Angela Munty, our solid waste director.
Were you asked, did your father ask why you were upset?
Yes, sir.
Did you respond truthfully?
Yes, sir.
Did you intend to instigate a riot or otherwise cause a breach of the peace?
No, sir.
After that statement to your father that they, it's inferred, it's being wrong to describe it since it inferred profanity, were you in any way aggressive toward Mr. Lanigan or to anyone?
No, sir.
Did you have your belt in your hand whenever this incident occurred?
I did.
Why was that?
I had just taken it off. I thought the situation was over. That's all I can say about it.
Okay. Were you the aggressor in either of these instances?
No, sir.
Do you believe that you've neglected your duty as treasurer?
No, sir.
Do you believe that you have in any way been incompetent in your duties?
No, sir.
Have you been dishonest in either your duties or with the court today?
No, sir.
I'd like to call Ms. Connolly at this point to give context on the TransNav and make it issues. She's working very close. We told her that, and she's, I think, 2 minutes away, so if we can give her a call to have her come on over, if everybody's acceptable, if we take a brief recess.
We stand in recess for, what, 10 minutes?
Thank you. You wanna call them?
Yeah, coffee down there. Thank you, sir. Anything best we can do? I want my little hub thing on there. too.
What's a little hub?
One of those things called sleeve. Oh, sleeves.
You want to touch it?
I'm good, thank you.
Want to give me some exercises, Jamie?
Yeah, that's right. Get up and do our calisthenics.
Yeah.
and I believe all are present, so.
I'd like to ask Ms. Conley to provide testimony to the court with regard to certain issues,
I'd be happy to.
if you please. All right, right here, so. you got it. All right, so just since you weren't here to kind of inform you of where we're at, Mr. Hinkle has provided testimony to the court with regard to the TransNav, the Megit, and the other the delinquent payments, as well as some of the other issues identified in the addendum to the ground supporting termination of Keegan Hinkle. At some points, we went into closed sessions with regard to the TransNav and the Mega airframe systems. We might have to do that again with you at this point, so if we do, please bear with us as we handle that issue. Okay? Can you state your name, please?
Mary C. Catherine Conley.
Were you previously the Boyle County Treasurer?
I was the Boyle County Treasurer. I think I was appointed in 1995 or 1996. Prior to that, I was the finance officer.
And how long did your employment as Boyle County Treasurer last?
Up until September 30th of 2020.
Did Mr. Hinkle work under you at any point?
He did, well, as finance officer. He was hired as finance officer, and he worked as finance officer for 2 or 3 months, and then he was offered the position of treasurer, and I stayed with him for approximately a month after that.
At the time, so September of 2020 was your last official employment as Boyle County Treasurer?
It was.
At the time, during that time, in September 2020, was the TransNav incentive payments, were they 10 quarters behind on incentive payments at that time?
Yes, they were.
Were the Mega airframe systems missing wage reconciliations for 7 quarters?
Yes, they were.
I'd ask that we go into closed session at this point.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
Okay, for the record, we have a motion by Mr. Gay and second by Mr. Short to go into closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Robin, you excuse yourself and flip that off. No give it a minute.
You wanna invite, Robin needs to be invited back in as well.
Should I do that? May I
Sure,
do that?
Sure.
Miss Robin? We'd love you to join us.
I'm gonna have questions.
Jason? Are we checking upstairs?
I sent him a text of going back in open.
Okay, so,
I move
Entertain a
we-
mo-
I move we come back into open session.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion to come back out of closed session into open session, made by Magic Gay and seconded by Magic Short. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. We're now in open session. No actions were taken during closed session.
Ms. Conley, I'd like to ask you some questions about some other issues. There's been an allegation that Mr. Hinkle neglected his duty because the budget had not been entered into the 2021-2022 budget had not been entered into KDS as required. To your knowledge, what requirement is there to enter the budget into KDS?
I know no requirement in statute, except in the personnel policy. It indicates that, I mean, his job description and my job description, that we were responsible for entering the budget.
When you did budgets, when did you typically have that entered into the KBS system?
Typically, it took me to the end of July to enter the budget, just because the budget is usually approved at the very end of June, and I never felt it was prudent to waste my time putting in a budget and having to go back and change it. And then after budget season, I needed usually a week's vacation or a couple of days vacation. So that budget, and then of course then we have to close or at least reconcile the bank accounts for June. So typically, I never got started on keying in the budget until the middle to the end of July every year that I did the budget, because it is a solid 2-day data entry project, in addition to balancing once you get it in and just typed in.
Is that similar to the closing out the months during a quarter?
Closing out the months typically take a month. Now, does the statute or DLG require you to reconcile your bank account by the 15th of the month? Yes. And I've had conversations with DLG in the past, that is the Department for Local Government, that there are laws still on the books that are not, that are somewhat archaic and probably need to be changed, but that was not a priority. But that they understood that by the time you get the mail and you get the bank statements, of course, Keegan does not reconcile the bank statements for internal control purposes. That is done by Shannon Green. She does the reconciliations, so you have to wait until her non-payroll payroll schedule process is through. And then once you get the reconciled bank statements, and sometimes they were after the 15th, because a lot of times she would bring me the joint jail, because she knew we were going to have joint jail, so I would get the joint jail one, but then I wouldn't get the other ones until later. So it took me until the end of the month typically, or at least the third week of the month, following the month end, to actually reconcile monthlies. Now, during budget season, I would do March. Sometimes and Phil, you can, I didn't always get those months end during, because my good Squire Salmons reminded me that sometimes I needed, this is a month late, Mary, so there's priorities we have to take as treasurers, and so at the end of a fiscal year, so again, month ends usually within a month, except during budget time. Now, year-end reconciliations and closeout, I think last year was the first year I closed my books at the end of August. But before that, it took me to the middle of September, because there are many statutory requirements that I took, well, they're not statutory requirements. I need to retract that. That's wrong. There were many auditing requirements that we used to do that I thought was beneficial to the fiscal court that we didn't have to do. Determining what is actually unused funds, unencumbered funds, as we turn into the next fiscal year. So there's a lot of reporting. The detailed general ledger is printed out, and it could be 800, I don't even know how many pages. It's this thick, telling you. And it's in pica, smaller than pica, and you go through I would count to make sure. Because even though you do a month-end reconciliation and close, doesn't mean that you didn't miss something. I didn't have anybody double-checking my work. So when I got to the year end, I took that detailed general ledger and spent hours flipping through pages after counting the number of salaries under animal control director, under animal control cleaners, under animal control, making sure that there were 12 or 24 equal payments, 26 equal payments in the calendar year. So I didn't have to go back and reclassify things. Now, there were times that I submitted my quarterly report and it was wrong because by the time I got through all of these checks and balances, I would have to refile my quarterly report. So because I would make journal entries to reclassify information so that when the fiscal court looks at historical data, actual as well as budgeted, it's true in nature and there wasn't a misclassification in certain areas as you moved forward and did that annual, how you like to look at your actual and through the budget process. So it was very important to me to do that, and I was on occasion, making sure. Well, Keegan and I did year end together whenever I was still here, and he watched me do that, and I told him how important it was to make sure that your year end is clean for the auditors before they came. So I don't know if the state auditor understands what it takes for somebody that has a $30 million budget to close, because we're not like other counties like Warren County or Boone County. We don't have 12 people in the finance department. We have one.
The state auditor, does that individual have any control or any supervisory role over the treasurer for the Boyle County treasurer?
The auditor's office, no. In fact, that's actually should be. It's an ethical violation. I mean, those auditors come in and they're actually peer reviewed by other auditors. So I never worked specifically with the state auditor, who's a lovely man, but I worked with the people who work under him, and all of those people are very solid, good people.
You said that the budget, is DLG, when do they need the budget for the upcoming year in by?
The Department for Local Government doesn't have a required date. They just want, now you're required to send the first reading copy to the state local debt officer because they have to sign that. And I'm sure you've seen that on your budgets. But then you have your second reading, the judge signs it a second time. And then from there, whenever you have time, you're to send the Department for Local Government a copy of your finalized budget. There is nothing in writing that says when. There's a lot of counties out there that forget to do it.
Josh, our guy upstairs said when you ask questions, if you could speak more into the mic.
I'm really loud.
As long as this gets us, we'll be fine. I apologize for that. I'll try to speak more clearly into the mic. Did you typically, did DLG, I think there was something about September, getting the budget for the upcoming year. Did you try to have the budget to them by September?
Well, I usually mailed it after it was approved. You're talking about, I need to clarify, what exactly are you talking about?
Well,
The approved budget for,
it's my understanding that they didn't deal with the new budget until September.
oh yeah, because they wanted it so that whenever they got their quarterly reports, so September was the first quarter end. And DLG always kind of liked to have the budget whenever I submitted my quarterly report to them after the first quarter of the year, which would end in September. So in October, you're doing your quarterly report, or the end of October. They do, I think, check to see if that budget's there, and if you don't have it in, then they'll call you and ask you.
Would it be accurate to say that reconciling the fiscal year is a priority in the months of July and August over getting the budget entered into KVS?
I don't think either one of them takes precedence over the other. It's what you remember when you have time to do it. Because there's a lot of external things, and I've had things sit on my desk and then go, oh crap, I haven't done that yet. So, I need to get that done. So, as far as sending in a budget, that's not going to make or break DLG. That's not going to make or break the county. It's not going to make or break, it's just one of those things that you have on your desk to do that sometimes you don't always get to it right away when you have time to do it. So.
All right. Can you explain, during your tenure as treasurer, can you explain what it was like during the months of June and July in a typical year? Like what your duties were and how, just explain it to somebody who's not familiar with it.
June and July, specifically June and July. June was stressful because you wanted to make sure that when you have your first reading, then you have your second reading, and during June is when you have your second reading, and all of those changes in the first reading have to be implemented and documented, so you don't have somebody coming back and saying, there were changes made in the second reading that were never authorized in the first reading. So I was very careful about documentation, and it was very strenuous and stressful till we got to the point where we had the second reading, which typically, every single year was either the last court meeting of June, or there was a special meeting that we've had in the past to do the second reading. And from there, then, I'm not sure who did it here, but it was always my job to do all of the advertisements to make sure that that ordinance was done in compliance with the law. So I had to make sure that the advertisement was written and sent to the newspaper, which isn't a small task. And then from there, you wanted to make sure then that your department heads understood what was in the budget. Did the fiscal court make any changes in the budget? Because those people are now purchase ordering. July 1, they're purchase ordering under a new budget. So those people needed to know what was changed in their budget. So typically I went around and sat down with each and every one of our employees, including Susanna, including Shannon, because she did payroll, all of those people, and we talked about what was new in the budget and what they needed to add and change in the way that they did their jobs. And then from there, I was hoping I'd get a vacation in July, the 1st of July, because the last 4 months were always just a lot of hours and work. And then in July, I would take a few, and then I'd come back and key in the budget. But then you have your departments still calling you every 5 minutes and emailing you like, Mary, you haven't got the budget in, that keeps telling me I'm over budget. And then you have to make sure that all of your department heads and all of the people who are using KVS are keying into next as opposed to current, because inevitably through the month of July you have people that forget that they're supposed to key everything into next, which is next year's financials, and they key into this year's financials. So that's what you have to look for at the end of July and August, and you usually find it that you have to start reclassifying things now that come from a year-end close. So it's a lot to keep up with.
Could you accomplish it in 40 hours a week?
No,
Is the treasurer, is that a salaried position?
it's a salaried exempt position.
You were Mr. Hinkle's supervisor for a while, is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Did you ever observe him to have a lack of attention and detail to his job?
No. Again, I worked with him for, 2-3 months maybe, but he always made the effort and caught on quite quickly, I might add.
Did you ever observe him to neglect his duty?
Not while I was there.
to act dishonestly,
Not while I was there.
to act in an incompetent fashion.
Not while I was there.
Did you have a habit of signing up for multiple, I guess listservs is what I call them, but multiple professional organizations via email?
LRC,
What is LRC specifically?
Legislative Research Commission, who create the state laws that affect county governments typically. NACO sent me a lot of stuff. CACO, CACTFO, Kentucky Association of County Treasurers and Finance Officers, got a lot of emails from them. The IRS, and they send out a lot of emails. Who else did I do? You know, organizations like that that were pertinent to my job. I used to get newsletters from R.J. Palmer, you know, the group that did our debt services, and the auditor's office always put out information as well. So, you know, I could leave in a day and come back and have very easily 120 emails in a day.
Were those emails for reference for you, or were they required, was it required for you to read them or respond to them as part of your duties as treasurer?
No, I was nosy and just wanted to know what the IRS was doing, and I wanted to know what NACO was doing so I could make the judge aware if there was anything coming down the pike. And we actually averted, because I was watching LRC's website, and we averted a detrimental law that could have been passed for counties as a whole, and we're able to circumvent that. I mean, that's why I watched them. There was no requirement for me, but it was important that, and when I would tell other county treasurers throughout the state, they're like, they kind of laughed at me because they just couldn't believe the amount of effort that I put into doing those things. Because that's not typical. I'm somewhat atypical to another county treasurer.
And all of those emails came to your official Boyle County Treasurer email account, correct?
They did.
Give me a moment, let me see if there's any other questions I have for you. I think that's all I have for her at this time, with regard to the grounds that were stated in the two letters. At this point, I'm not sure I have any more questions for Ms. Thomas.
As a salaried employee, as treasurer, were you entitled to comp time?
Yes, if you are aware of your personnel policy, it allows exempt employees to have comp time. I mean, that was written by the fiscal court and passed. That's part of your administrative code.
And since you left the county treasurer position, retired, have you been provided with any paperwork by Keegan, which would, for example, at the side door, which would be privy to the general public that may assist him in his duties as treasurer?
Aside from helping with the budget and teaching him, because keep in mind, I was not here through the budget cycle. And they don't teach you at the Department for Local Government how to do a budget. They give you a book, and now it's online. You're talking about a $40 million complicated budget with federal grants in them. Health insurance, that is a self-insured health insurance program that has to be budgeted. And you have other types of balancing, carryovers, reserve accounts. All of those things have got to work in unison, otherwise you will never get that budget to balance correctly. And so that the public and the fiscal court understands what's in their budget, that has to be done in a proper fashion that you can't find on the internet. So did he ask me how to get this balanced and to look at the health insurance fund and teach him how to do it, and the 911 fund, and teach him how to do the prorating of expenses before we pay it over to the city? Because nobody here understands that information. Did I help him understand that because he's never been to a budget cycle? Yes. Was there personal information? No. I never saw personnel files. I never saw anything like that. It was so that I could help him help my community.
I don't think we have any questions of Ms. Conley.
I don't have any further questions for you either, so. It's an open session, if you want to say.
I have a question. Do we have the right to ask questions? I was told to come in and keep my mouth shut.
You can ask a question if you like.
Well, then I didn't get proper information then when I came in, and then that,
You can ask, but we don't have, you don't have to ask questions or speak if you do not.
that's not what I was told. I was told at the last meeting, we were to basically not say anything. Is that accurate?
Not entirely.
Not entirely? Okay, how was it not entirely?
If we chose to speak, we could, but it would,
And you heard it differently than what I heard, so, but I
No,
see Jamie shaking his head in
Yeah.
agreement, so,
I heard it like you heard it.
okay,
Ask
thank
a
you.
question.
Then it was explained
You
differently.
know, I
today.
guess I sat here and not thinking that I had the right to ask anything. I didn't focus on what I might ask. I've made notes, but I hadn't thought in that direction, because I didn't think I had the opportunity to, so. And I apologize, I wasn't as prepared as I would like to have been, but I was told that I would not have that right, so I sat and listened and not made notes as much as I
That's
would
actually
like
not
to.
true.
That's exactly not true, well, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
I
I'm
actually
wrong.
clarified, and I believe someone else clarified that said, that Chris gave us counsel that said, we're gonna have a hearing, and that, you know, we don't have to say anything, is pretty much what his words were. So
I concur with
At
that.
no point did he say, you can't say anything. And I think you of all people know that if you have a problem with something, you'll ask. And you're not one to kind of keep your feelings or questions to yourself, so.
I followed the instructions that I was given. At this time, I have none, but I'm certainly now aware that we have right to ask questions. Thank you.
You have no questions you want to ask?
Not
now?
at this not at this moment, no, sir.
Should I proceed?
Do you have anything else to present?
There's a couple other things. I think he's already testified to it with regard to these invoices that were supposed to be not paid. He's already stated why that was and that they were in fact paid. I've got a couple extra people we could call. I'm not sure how relevant that is. His statement to the fact that they were taken care of is going to be taken for it. For the truth of that, if there's any ambiguity on that, we can have other people. I'm not sure how relevant it would be if there's any issue beyond just he explained why that was found and what occurred. So.
Councilman?
It's up to you, since you're hearing.
Well, I mean, we can rely on that. If I don't know if there's anything else we need.
They need more confirmation.
It's available if you all want it, that he's already stated that here's why we can have that confirmed with regard to these unpaid invoices, that his story is corroborated. If you want that to be corroborated, we can have it, or I'm not sure how valuable that would be to you all in your determination, so.
I do have a question now that I've had a chance to think about. There's one question that I have that Ms. Conley's not involved in, but it goes back to one of the claims on the paper. Is that all right to ask? If I have,
Are you asking Ms. Conley, or are you?
No, I'm asking you basically.
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
I'd like to know more about the gate situation of what happened there, because I'm not well informed as to the gate. Keegan said that he didn't remember anything about it. How did it end up being one of the 9 that I think you presented? I'm a little confused about that, so if that can be discussed, I would appreciate it, sir.
I'm going off what I was provided by the letter.
Yes, sir.
I've discussed it with my client. That's the information I have, so
It
why
seemed,
ended up
it
here.
seemed to me, what little bit I've heard, it seemed to be pretty important piece of something that happened. I'd like to know more about it.
I can't provide any more than, I know that it was listed here. I've discussed it with him. That's where he's at. If any, I don't know that we can do more than that.
I would say that you should probably question staff that was there when it happened. That's probably going to be your best answer on what happened.
Were you there?
It was
Did you s-
reported.
It was reported, and that's all I know. It was reported.
Just,
But that's all I really know. It was reported. Why was the gate even there?
It's my understanding that people come in from the hallway into the judge's door. They don't wait to ask the secretary if the judge is there or not, and they just proceed to bypass the secretaries or assistants and go straight into his office unannounced.
So the answer was to put a gate there. That was the best answer we could come up with.
I think the idea had been to put a half door as well, but the half door that we put down in the tax office was very expensive and very complicated. So I think the short-term solution, from my understanding, was to put a gate up. I guess we could have put a little rope up or something, but
I think that's right. My understanding was that a gate was put up. Matter of fact, while we were at a conference in Lexington, if you recall, and that Mr. Hinkle came out and he hadn't seen the gate, and he said, "What's going on here?" And he kicked the gate down.
But we weren't there to see it, but there was somebody that did see it.
But he destroyed the gate.
Keegan, is that your memory of the?
No, sir.
You didn't tell me that.
Bill, you've been here 20-some years. Have you ever seen a gate put in front of that?
Me?
Yes, sir.
No, sir, but they had talked about putting a half door up so people could come up and state their business, and then the girl there, the secretary, could let them come on in or what have you, and conduct a lot of their business at the door.
it was more of a safety feature for the staff that's out front that may have to deal with somebody that's irate. So
Which they had recently.
I would say that I would not have objected to it being there because I'm concerned about the safety of staff, so.
I thought it was a good idea myself. Like,
I mean, $80 to $100 versus several $100.
Well, it was just part of the 9, and I wanted to hear more about it. Since it was important enough to be part of the 9, I felt like it was worthy of knowing.
Well, do we need to bring a secretary in to let her verify that he kicked the gate?
I don't think we need to do that.
It's up to you.
If there's no more questions, I'm gonna make a motion, we adjourn.
Do we need to go into executive session?
Right, I think you did go
Closed
in
session.
if they're done presenting, upon their completion, I don't know if he wants to do a summary, closing argument or whatever, but when Mr. Tucker's done, then I think the appropriate thing to do would be to make a motion to go into executive session.
Okay, I'd asked that earlier and I was told no, so wasn't sure.
Sure. So we've addressed specifically each of these. I do not believe that there's any of the grounds that were stated prior or that we've not addressed specifically here today. If there are, that's my fault. I believe that we specifically addressed each and every one of them. None of them lies to the statutory duty or statutory provision that it's required for the fiscal court to find which is that pursuant to KRS 68010, that the fiscal court may remove the county treasurer or acting county treasurer for neglect of duty, incompetency, or dishonesty. Several of these grounds don't even apply to those standards, in my opinion. Obviously, that's only my opinion, and others can vary. With regard to, it strikes me that there was an addendum. The decision I understood was made on the 27th with regard to that, the initial decision to remove him and to terminate his employment. So that's the original 9 that were in that letter, which we've addressed. The addendum we received on the 30th, I'm not sure whether those were included or why those were not included in the original 9 grounds that were stated. We went ahead and addressed them, but as we were presented here today, none of those omit or account for a neglect of duty or dishonesty or incompetency. I don't believe anybody stated that he's been dishonest. But through both Ms. Connolly and Mr. Hinkle, we showed that, in fact, he was going above and beyond to fix these issues and communicated that with TransNav that had been issues that existed prior to him becoming treasurer, and that he had told them that they would be addressed at a time after the demands of the county treasurer allowed him to address it in a timely fashion. Likewise, we've heard that what he was doing was consistent with what he understood his duties to be, and had both trained under the prior county county treasurer, and was doing that consistent with what he had learned during his time as tutelage. I don't think that any of these grounds necessitate the finding that they need to remove him, nor, frankly, even if he were an at-will employee without this, really should be sufficient grounds to fire him at all. In fact, I believe that after a close examination, that in fact is very flattering to Mr. Hinkle's performance, especially given the fact that he's 24, younger than the statutory would allow, but only through his academic credentials was he even allowed to obtain this position. So given his on-the-job training, the fact that this is his first year, I believe that it's very laudable that he was able to do this and to resolve the opinion or the issues that he was presented with, many of which, as presented here, existed prior to him becoming the county treasurer. So we would ask that you not remove him and allow him to continue with his duties.
Thank you.
Okay, is that your closing statement, counsel?
It is. I don't think there's anything else we need to address. That's all that we've been given to address. So yes.
Okay. All right,
Move
then
that
we
we-
entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make the motion, we're gonna close session pursuant to the Kentucky Open Meetings Act, exceptions authorized that we might lead to the appointment, dismissal, or discipline of an individual employee.
Is there a second? Seconded by Magistrate Cullen, the motion made by Magistrate Gay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those like sign, motion carries. We'll go into closed session, and we'll turn the mic off and excuse everybody. All right.
We'll
We'll wait until he says we're on and we can bring people back in.
I'm gonna make a beeline for the bathroom once, once this is over.
I couldn't stand it earlier.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I
Okay.
figured this might be long, so.
I've let
Yeah, go ahead and bring it in.
Are we live? Well,
I
don't we
emailed
have to
him,
first go
I
out?
texted him, I said, going back in, and I'm asking if he's ready. He says,
We
"You're
have to
on."
do it on mic.
Okay.
Hold on,
Talking
is he
to
ready?
Bill or to
Yes.
the attorney?
Bill,
Okay.
You're invited again.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to come out of closed executive session.
I make a motion.
Second it.
Motion made to come out of executive session, made by Magistrate Short and seconded by Magistrate Sammons. Is, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Make a statement, there was no action taken during executive closed session. Now, we have other business to attend to.
I'll make a motion that, after conducting our hearing today, that we uphold our termination decision of our treasurer pursuant to KRS 68.010 subsection 4, based on neglect of duty, incompetency, and/or dishonesty, effective today, August 3rd, 2021. That's my motion.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Magistrate Gay, seconded by Magistrate Short. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The motion carries unanimously. Gentlemen, if there's no other business before this body,
I make
entertain a motion
we-
to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. We stand in adjournment.